Okay, looks like we are live tonight on Standing for Truth. We've got another much needed stream. Guys, please check out our last few. We've been refuting and addressing their so called best evidence. They've been quite technical, the last few that we've done, but they are absolutely necessary. We want to be as comprehensive as possible. We've taken on distant starlight recently. We've taken on nested hierarchies. Last night, be sure to check it out. I know we did it kind of late, so a lot of people may have missed it, but we went over BioLogos, one of their best videos where they go over the so-called best genetic evidence for universal common descent. So we touched on chromosome 2 fusion, pseudogenes, chimp human genetic similarity, for example. So be sure to check that out as well. Tonight, we are going to, this is going to be a fun one. We're going to demolish dating methods. We're going to do our best to also touch on accelerated nuclear decay, as well as the so-called heat problem. If you've seen my debates, the one recently with David and Erica, for example, some of the explanations may sound familiar to you, since these are arguments often brought forth by the evolution, especially the heat problem. So we'll touch on those again and even go into more detail that's typically not possible in a debate setting. So let's kick it off here. I've got Jeremy with me. He's an expert on this topic. He's been studying it for years. So we are going to leave no stone unturned. I mean, in a nutshell, I'll start it off in the fact that dating methods, at the end of the day, they're all unreliable because they all do need many different assumptions, even isochron dating. Okay, they'll often, like for example, conspiracy cats, he'll just admit, okay, all your other dating methods require assumptions, and we know that results come back that are in error. Rocks of known age are often dated incorrectly. Therefore, why should we trust rocks of unknown age if they can't even get the rocks of known age correct? So, conspiracy cats and other evolutionists, they'll admit to that, which is interesting. But then they'll point to isochron dating because apparently isochron dating gets rid of the assumptions. But the funny thing is, even isochron dating relies on assumptions. For example, an assumed history. Isochron dating assumes that there was no global flood and there was no accelerated nuclear decay during this flood. It also assumes away the supernatural creation week. So there's two assumptions. And it even assumes a constant rate for the most part. It assumes away the accelerated decay, as I said. With the other methods, you're looking at assumptions on initial conditions, constancy of rate, which applies to isochron. A closed system, that's the one that they'll say isochron doesn't assume. And we're going to address all that today as well. But most importantly, the isochron dating does require an assumed history. Now, I always say that if they're looking at rocks that were formed recently and they're getting inaccurate dates for these rocks of known age, why in the world are we going to trust those dating methods for rocks of unknown age? So why don't we, I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy in 1 second, but I do want to say one point regarding the isochron dating and the accelerated nuclear decay, not only during the flood, but also during the creation. Okay, if there is evidence for accelerated nuclear decay, which there is, and we're going to get into it, then that completely invalidates the isochron technique, because a higher rate of decay, which would have taken place at the time of the flood due to a number of reasons that we're going to get into: subduction, friction, runaway subduction, the enormous amounts of heat produced at the flood would accelerate nuclear decay, for example. So that would actually yield a greater amount of daughter isotopes in short periods of times. Therefore, even the ages derived today in the present may give dates of millions of years, when in fact these dates are only relative, and the audience needs to understand that, because you're looking at relative versus absolute. These dates derived are not absolute dates, because if accelerated nuclear decay took place, sure, the results, we can accept them regarding isochron dating. We can accept the millions of years dates, but they're relative, because they're really only thousands of years old since the decay rate sped up at the flood. So obviously, if during the Genesis flood, the isotopes, the rates of decay were incredibly accelerated, up to even millions of times faster, actually, than what's observed today in currently measured rates. That means those rocks really are only a few thousand years old. And guess what? There is, well, for one, there's multiple independent lines of evidence for accelerated nuclear decay. So we're going to get into that real quick. But that means none of these dating methods can be relied upon. So they can just be tossed right into the trash. So that's just my 2 cents in a few minutes worth. But I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy. Give us your thoughts, brother. Jeremy, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on dating methods, including isochron. Take it away, brother. What are your thoughts?
So, which route do you want me to take? Are we gonna explain the origin of isochron or not anymore? Sorry, the origin of isotopes or not anymore?
It's up to you. I mean, wherever you want to take the discussion. If you want to go over the origin of isotopes, I'm fine with that as well. We'll keep it comprehensive. Because we know that these radioisotope methods, Jeremy, they're praised. You see it in almost every single debate as irrefutable evidence for not only deep time evolution, but an Earth and a universe of billions of years old. So I think it's important that we go as comprehensive as possible. So yeah, if you feel like that's the best route to take, go ahead, brother.
It's not really the best route. I'm just trying to explain the origin of the isotopes because the protons, the neutrons, and the electrons within the atoms that that led to the isotopes do play a role in the isochron dating. But it is really very complex. I'll just give an elementary explanation of the origin of the isotopes and how we do it in a lab, okay, for the audience. So this will be elementary, if my English is correct. So here I go. Okay, about radioactive dating. As we know, all elements have atoms, and all elements are full of atoms. Okay, they have a number of special electrons and protons. Okay, whether this is school, if you remember in school. Okay, and an atom is the smallest unit of matter of a chemical element. Okay, and an atom are also made of very small particles called protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons and neutrons are in the center of the atom. If you look at the atom, just Google it. You'll know what I mean. All right, or if you remember what you learned in school, or well, actually, many students did not understand that very well themselves. So, no offense to the students, or at least in my class before, but I did understand it even when I was still in school. Okay, so these protons and neutrons are in the center of the atom. Okay, making up the nucleus. Okay, there's a nucleus in the atom. So the proton and the electron are exactly the same size. Okay, since opposite electric charge attract, as we know, protons and electrons attract each other. Okay, yeah, I'll just explain for people who do not know electric charge. An electric charge is the force carried by protons and electrons. Okay, an electron is the carrier of the electron. Electricity. Electron electricity. Okay, thank you for the uh, the word itself. I forgot. So electron is the carrier of electricity in solid materials only. And proton is also the carrier of electricity, actually, as I recall, in all solid materials, but opposite to the electron on electric charge. Okay, yeah, I said opposites attract. Now, since opposite electric charge attract, protons and electron. Guys, my English is getting better and better. Since opposite electric charges attract protons and electrons attract each other. Okay. Any questions so far? None. Okay. Let me continue. Now, neutrons. What does it have to do with these protons and electrons? A neutron has the same mass as a proton. Okay, it's also inside the atom. It doesn't have electric charge. Okay, this is the difference, and its amount in the atom can vary on different elements. Okay, and this is called the isotopes. This is called the isotopes. Okay, again, a neutron has the same size as a proton, but it doesn't have electric charge. The others have electric charge, and their electric charge do electric charge attract, and opposite electric charges attract. Okay, and its amount in the atom can vary on different elements, and this variation, it's called the isotopes. Okay, and to be specific, to go with the isotopes, an isotope is here I go again with my English. Sorry. An isotope is a chemical element. Okay, an isotope is a chemical element in an atom that has different number of neutrons. Okay, I explained the neutron a while ago, and now I explained the isotope, so you see the link between the two. Okay, now there are two types of isotopes. Okay, parent and daughter isotopes. Okay, atoms of several elements have so many neutron, so they become unstable isotopes. Okay, okay. I explained neutrons and isotopes a while ago. So again, atoms of several elements, okay, have so many neutrons, so they become unstable isotopes. Okay, so they got different number of these isotopes, neutrons, and so on. That is why the elements vary. Okay, and these unstable isotopes decay by removing some of their particles to be stable again. So this process is called radioactive decay. Okay, let's say an hourglass. This is really the popular explanation using an hourglass. Okay, the unstable isotopes are up here from an element, and then when they start to remove their particles to be stable again, okay, they become daughter isotopes. So this is the parent up here, and then when the hourglass the sand in the hourglass goes down to the other side of the other side of the hourglass, it becomes stable again, and they become daughter isotopes. Okay, parent and daughter. Okay, so I think I've explained it very well. There are samples of parent and daughter isotopes. There are several of them. Usually there are the primary amount of them are 6 to 7, but some of them are doubled. Like the if I'm not mistaken, lead. The lead. There's the basic lead element, and this lead has been modified to correct in the English. Uh, there's another way. There are two types of lead. That's my point. Okay, so there are samples of parent and daughter isotopes: carbon to nitrogen, uranium to lead. That's popular. Potassium-argon, and so on. Okay, but lead, for example, like I said, and there are other elements that I mentioned, and there are more that are like two in one. There are two types of lead. Okay. Okay, so parent and parent daughter decay trend is by the samples I so the parents are the carbon, uranium, and potassium, and the daughter are the nitrogen, lead, and argon that I mentioned. Okay, so carbon decays to nitrogen, uranium to lead, potassium to argon, and so on. Okay, so we pick those elements, okay, that we could using uniformitarianism standard can be applied to estimate the age of rocks and anything and minerals and so on. So lastly, I'm gonna finish this up right now. How do we do radiometric dating on a lab? Okay, it's simple. A rock is tested for their parent and daughter isotopes. All minerals, rocks, fossils have their parent and daughter isotopes. So that's the basis for radiometric dating. Okay, okay. Like I said, it is an hourglass is an analogy. I've explained that. Okay, so what again? Yeah. Sorry, I already explained how they do it on a lab. Okay, using the hourglass. So I think that's it. I've explained how the origin of isotopes and how they did it in a lab. So take it away, raw math or standing for truth.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that was really, really phenomenal explanation actually there, Jeremy. I couldn't.
It's basic high school. What we learn in high school and college.
Well, you know, some people in the chat were pointing out that you speak like a teacher, which means you're doing a great job. Keep it up, brother. This is going to be a really good stream. So, one that comes to mind to me, because I've debated the issue of human evolution quite frequently when dating and establishing their so-called hominin timescale. A major method that they use is potassium-argon. And just for the audience sake, that's when, so for example, when volcanic ash or say igneous rocks that are associated with the hominid bones that they find, what they're now doing is they're going to use the potassium-argon method. This one does have numerous unprovable and unknowable assumptions versus, say, the isochron. And I like to point out the isochron again is because more well-informed evolutionists like conspiracy cats, they'll just go right for the isochron. Boom. They think they're going for the jugular. So we kind of addressed that in the beginning, but we're going to do that again in more detail. But in regards to the potassium-argon method that they're using to date the hominin fossil record, so they need to make very specific assumptions. One of them being about the initial isotope concentrations that's actually in the rock when it crystallizes. Okay, so for example, what they'll assume, the uniformitarians, they're assuming that there's no excess daughter isotopes that are actually trapped in the system when the rock forms. Essentially, they have to assume that the clock itself has now gone back to zero. So here's the problem, though. Okay, that assumption, along with the other assumptions, including the assumed history that isochron is involved with, it can't actually be directly verified because those early conditions, as we know, were occurred in the untestable, unobservable, unrepeatable past. So therefore, what's a way, and it's probably obvious to the audience, think to yourself, what's a way where we can test the accuracy of that assumption? Okay, well, obviously, let's test the validity of that assumption by looking to rocks of known age. Okay, let's date rocks of known age that formed from recent eruptions, for example, because there's been a lot of recent eruptions that have occurred relatively in the relatively recent past. Okay, so what's fascinating is and this is done over and over again, and not just by young Earth creation geologists, secular geologists as well. They collect these samples from recent volcanic eruptions, and Jeremy can speak to this as well. I'll hand it over to him in a minute. But what they do is they collect these samples. They're now dated using the potassium-argon method, for example. Now, the dates that are actually derived conflict with the actual true age of those rocks. So the question that I asked at the beginning, and that should be asked to any evolutionist and uniformitarian, is if young rocks of known age, okay, yield dates of millions of years old, why should we trust those same dating methods on rocks of unknown age? It makes absolutely it makes no sense. And this is just one way to invalidate that critical assumption. Jeremy, what are your thoughts?
Do you want me to talk as an evolutionist here?
No, no, just give me your. Well, I know that they'll say that these
Be-
daughter isotopes were inherited from the mantle, but that's what's funny. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
Is
yeah, yeah,
they can't be trusted. Is that what you were going to say? I'm guessing.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with them.
They come because the Earth formed 3.5 billion years ago. So
Exactly.
the rocks below the mantle rocks below also would have been 3.5 billion years ago.
Right. Right.
Would reveal long ages.
Exactly.
Even
No,
when they erupt from the St. Helens, for example.
beautiful point. I love when you play devil's advocate because it shows that we know their arguments and we know how to debunk that. So I love when they bring that up because they're just further solidifying my argument because now we know that argon can be present in rocks of known young age, which means that basic assumption of zero argon in rocks of unknown age is actually a ridiculous assumption because, like you said, their explanation is okay, argon, these daughter isotopes are inherited by these newly formed rocks from the mantle and from those rocks that you said formed millions of years ago. Okay, even
Billions,
if we
billions.
accept that explanation, that just shows that okay, how do we know that didn't also occur in the rocks of unknown age? Do you see what I'm saying, Jeremy? Like it's just either way, that explanation doesn't get them out of the out of that problem of that basic assumption. What are your thoughts, brother?
Can you put it in a nutshell? I am confused with the English. Sorry, forgive me, my friend.
Well, I'm saying with their explanation that these daughter isotopes are inherited, like you said, from the
Oh, yeah.
mantle,
Oh,
that actually makes our argument stronger because that just because remember they have to assume that there's no it's all been zeroed out. The clock's been zeroed out. They have to assume that to get an accurate date because they have to measure the.
zeroed out. Sorry. Zeroed out. What do you mean zeroed out?
It means that to do the potassium-argon dating method and to analyze the ratio of isotopes from parent to daughter, they have to assume that there's no daughter isotopes. It's been zeroed out because now all daughter isotopes they have to assume have
Uh,
been derived from the decay of the parent isotope, potassium to argon. So therefore, their explanation only makes our argument stronger because we say exactly the point is we're getting unreliable results from rocks of young age and known age. Therefore, we can't assume that there was no argon present also in rocks of unknown age. So that is critical. Yeah, go ahead, brother. What are your thoughts?
yeah, I think you said it all. There's nothing more to add over there.
Good. Okay. Well,
I agree.
that's good. And Jeremy, you'd probably agree with me that this is the easier
Unless you
one.
want me to. Sorry. Forgive me. You were saying.
Well, I'm just saying the fact that I think you would agree with me that those methods with obvious,
Mhm.
unknowable, unprovable assumptions, those oftentimes the evolutionists will concede that. Some of the more knowledgeable evolutionists. That's why they'll go right to isochron dating because they're aware that there's all these conflicting results. So that's why I feel like isochron is the one that needs to be um, discussed in most in
Uh,
most detail. So yeah, go ahead, brother. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on that?
but we have to be fair with the evolutionists. The ratio between the reliability of isochron and the irreliability is irreliability the correct English. The reliability, the ratio of
Reliability.
reliability of the isochron dating method, uh, its ratio compared to its irreliability is huge. It is more rocks are tested that reveal that the isotopes method works.
Right.
Okay,
And my
uh, there's an explanation from us why that's the case.
Well, my explanation, real
Okay.
quick, and this is because in a debate, it's often difficult to go into incredible detail. So what you say, it's even if, and here's what I want the audience to understand. The fact is, we get unreliable results. But even if every single result was accurate, was reliable, the assumptions regarding the zeroing out of, say, the daughter isotopes, even if those were more or less accurate, it doesn't matter because obviously, as I pointed out in the beginning, if radioisotope decay was accelerated, say during the Genesis flood, as we know there's significant evidence for, then the radioisotope decay clocks, all of them, you name it, all of them, including isochron dating, can never be relied upon when they date rocks of millions and billions of years old. Those dates, whether reliable or unreliable, they're relative. They're not absolute dates. So yeah, these rocks could date millions of years old when really they only formed thousands of years old because that decay rate was accelerated at the Genesis flood. So that's what's amazing
Uh,
about that explanation is that, now they have to take even their most precious isochron dating and throw that into the trash too. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Standing for truth, there's another explanation to that, a stronger one. Forgive me. I'm not trying
You're not
to
trying to
fight
steal
you.
my thunder? No problem. This is a discussion, Jeremy. Whatever comes to mind,
Yeah,
let us know.
if you study catastrophic plate tectonics, because you say that uh, the rocks today, the rocks, okay, that we are testing, have been the same since creation. Is that what you're saying? I just like to clarify before I continue.
No, no. So I would say, well, for one, the isochron method, it would be impossible to be able to determine the difference between inherited daughter isotopes, say from creation, versus newly formed daughter isotopes from the actual decay. But as you know, Jeremy,
Uh,
real quick, as you know, catastrophic plate tectonics, what does it suggest? Well, it suggests that new oceanic crust is produced, which in turn actually replaces the old one. I mentioned this to Erica in our third debate. She had no rebuttal. So this new oceanic crust, okay, keyword is new, occurred at the Genesis flood, would show the same age through isochron dating since guess what? It all formed at the same time during the flood. So,
yeah.
yeah, you've
Yes.
got rocks at creation. You've also got new oceanic crust at the flood from the catastrophic plate tectonics model. And the listeners have heard me say this a million times. According to this model, the pre-flood supercontinent, it's it's dragged down by the pre-flood crust as it's subducting. Okay, geologic processes, of course, there'd be a lot of activity. There'd be a lot of heat produced. There'd be a lot of electricity going on in the rocks. Lots of geologic processes are happening in the earth at this time. So materials are obviously being displaced inside the earth. What does this result in? Well, it results in new rocks that, once again, the isochron would date the same age for. So all their dating methods, including the isochron, and that's why I always say the isochron dating even assumes a history, because isochron dating, these uniformitarians that are using it, they're assuming away a Genesis flood. There's an
The,
assumption right there. And then they also assume that nuclear decay was not accelerated. So I mean, and there's other things like worldwide volcanic activity and the fact that the earth is cracked like an egg, which would release magma and rocks during the flood. Those would also produce more rocks of the same age if they're dated. So honestly, if you just want to destroy these dating methods, go right for the Genesis flood, go right for accelerated nuclear decay. And yeah, there's going to be more arguments, that lead from there. For example, the heat problem, and you can get into those. But these are the ways to pretty well demonstrate to the evolutionists that, hey, listen, you could show me these isochron dates that are coming up with millions of years. It doesn't matter because they're relative. Because, yeah, they could come back as millions of years, but since nuclear decay was accelerated at the flood, that's fine. They're still only thousands of years old. I talked a lot there, Jeremy, so take your time. I'll mute myself, and whatever you got to say, brother, go ahead.
During catastrophic plate tectonics, the supercontinent Pangea, which God created, also cracked. Okay, there are several methods, ways that it cracked. You did not explain how they cracked. Okay, of course, the circulation of materials inside the mantle. Okay, as the pre-flood ocean was being dragged down by the fountains of the, but because it was being pushed by the fountains of the Great Deep, right? So it is dragging down the continents. As it is dragging down the continents, I mean worldwide. We're talking about all the continents today, all stick together into one giant Pangea. Okay, and this Pangea is being dragged down. Okay, and as it's being dragged down, um, those those pre-flood ocean crust went into the mantle, and when they went into the mantle, okay, this is a worldwide thing, okay, worldwide in scale. Those mantle rocks circled around,
No,
and they
Jeremy, I thought it was a local flood.
local flood is old Earth creationism.
No, I thought God told Noah, instead of just telling him to move, he told Noah to build, an ark for a local flood. No,
No,
I'm fooling with you. Go ahead, brother.
you better stop that.
Okay, go ahead, Jeremy.
As you can see, I lost where I was because you fooled me. All right, you is fooled correct? You yeah. Never mind. Forgive me. Where was I? Yeah. Those mantle rocks would be displaced by the pre-flood ocean crust. That is one explanation. There are other explanations, but we have no time. So these displaced mantle rocks would have to go somewhere, right? So one place that they would have to go is upwards. Okay, and what's upwards? The supercontinent. So there would be collisions between the rocks, the rocks that are being displaced by the pre-flood ocean crust, and then when these mantle rocks displaced when these mantle rocks collided with the super Pangea continent, it's one mechanism how the continents split apart. Okay, meters per second, because the momentum inside the mantle, the speed of the subduction of the pre-flood ocean crust was so fast. So the mantle materials are circling around or being displaced are also so fast, catastrophic that they also when they collided with the supercontinent, the supercontinent also it cracked the supercontinent. We're not talking about just one huge mantle rock formation, but we are talking about many of them as they're being displaced. Okay, so they cracked the one supercontinent into the continent that we see today, meters per second, because like I said, it was so fast at the beginning. Okay, the speed of the subduction, then it accelerated the flow of the mantle rocks and displaced them towards the one supercontinent. That is one explanation. Okay, well, there's no time to use the other explanation, but here's the point. Okay, you were right about what you said, that the pre-flood rocks, since the pre-flood ocean crust. Okay, did you say pre-flood ocean crust? I think you missed that. Did you say it, pre-flood ocean crust?
I
You,
did,
you
yeah.
Yeah, you did say that, okay? But they are below the water, right? They are below the water. Now, how do you explain, okay, let's say let's say this group of mantle rocks that are being displaced cracked the North Atlantic, the North American continent, and because the North American continent, for example, was connected with through Pangaea was connected with Europe, and then the African continent was connected with none other than the South American continent. Okay, so the mantle rocks, okay, that were being displaced, cracked them up. That is why we have the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the ridge that extends from North America to South America, the middle one. Okay, so that's why we have it because the mantle rocks were displaced and they went up. They cracked North America and Europe. That is why North America and Europe are now separated. And we do find features from North America that are also found in Europe. Okay, and we also do find features from South Africa. Africa is over here, and South America, which means they were once really connected. Okay, so these this separation of these continents, okay, would only uh, reveal the same isochron age at a certain at 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 certain parts of the continent's rear. Okay, you get it? Okay. Do you understand standing for truth?
I do, brother.
Yeah, because when the continents cracked, new rocks came out, right? So those new rocks, mantle rocks, would not extend towards the entire North American continent. It would not extend towards the entire South American continent, and it will not extend towards the entire Europe or Eurasia. It will not extend all the way towards the entire African continent. Let's say it could only extend about 1/4 uh, the size of North America, okay, and let's say 1/3 of South America, okay. So when that happens, right, they are mantle rocks, okay, that came out. So those mantle rocks would reveal the same isochron dates. Okay, this is one way that catastrophic plate tectonics can explain why the isochron method reveal the same age of the rocks. For like I said, in the North American continent, 1/4 of it, for example, I forgot the exact figures. 1/4 of it, okay, what was from the displaced rocks from the mantle, and then and since the age of the mantle are all usually the same, and it went into the continent, then those rocks would reveal the same age. Okay, that is why the isochron, okay, when we measure those parts of the North American, the 1/4 the size of the North American continent, for example, reveal the same age, just like in Europe, in Africa, and in South America. Okay, because they were once connected. Okay, that's one explanation. All right, but what about the rest? What about the rest? Okay, let's say what about the other 1/4, 3/4? Sorry for okay, let's say 1/4 in North America, right? What about the others? What about in the West? Well, let's say the mantle rocks only came up to, let's say, the Detroit area. What about the rest? Okay, why do isochron methods also reveal the same age in most cases? Okay, why do isochron methods also reveal the same ages within those rocks? Okay, because, right, when the continents were dragged down, when the supercontinent was dragged down, okay, uh, okay, and again, I have to repeat, the mantle rocks were displaced, and they went up to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Okay. By the way, the cracks at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, some of them are no longer visible because it's been thousands of years, so they were covered now. Okay, so it is not really very. It's still there. We can still see it clearly, but some of it are being covered already by sand or other things. Okay, so what about, the we explained 1/4 of North America, for example, and 1/4 of North America, 1/4 of Europe. When I say 1/4, I'm just inferring. Okay, I forgot the exact number, but it's a more or less. Okay, and in Africa, 1/4 also. So they got the mantle rocks that were displaced. Okay, okay. So they would obviously reveal the same age. Okay. Now what about the others? Okay. What about Western North America? What about Western South Africa? Western South America? What about Eastern Europe? And what about Eastern Africa? Okay. Now, what is the answer to that? Okay, I talked so long, so your turn, standing for truth, or you want me to continue? It's also possible. You want to
Yeah,
answer
Jerry.
that, or I'll answer that?
No, Jerry, I think you're on a roll. You can continue. I'm engaging with the chat at the moment, so maybe it's best if you. I think you're doing such a fantastic job. So why don't you continue, brother? You're doing great.
Okay, okay, okay. See, I'll continue. Okay. Okay, I have to repeat myself. Okay. The displacement of those mantle rocks. Okay. Crack the continent, the supercontinent. Okay. I've already explained that. And those mantle 1/4 went into the how many miles? Let's say 2 to 3,000 miles, maybe. Okay, 1/4 of North America. Like that. And what about the rest? Okay, what about the rest? Okay, why do they also show the same isochron dating, the same isochron ages? Okay, okay. Why do they still show the same isochron ages? Because they were untouched. Okay, during catastrophic plate tectonics. When I mean untouched, I'm not literally saying they were untouched. Okay, when the pre-flood ocean crust dragged down the continent. Okay, all right, it dragged it down. Okay, let's just look at my hands. Okay, I hope we can illustrate it here. Okay, this is the one supercontinent, and then this is the pre-flood ocean crust. It drags down the supercontinent along with it as it is subducting. Okay, and the mantle rocks that it is being displaced cracks the supercontinent, like I said before. Okay, and then when it cracked, the mantle rocks came out. Okay, and they, okay, covered 1/4 of North, South America and Europe, parts of Europe and parts of Africa. Okay, did you notice that the other parts that the mantle, the displaced mantle rocks did not cover when they came up? Did you notice they were not touched? I mean, they were not. They did not experience. I mean, when they were formed, okay, the rocks already are the same age. When they were dragged down, okay, the rocks are also the rocks in the western side of the United States, or North America, were also untouched. Okay, only one, like I said, only one fourth of it were covered with the new mantle rocks. That is why they were revealed as an isochrone dates. So drag down of the continent, then those displaced mantle rocks coming up, and then those displaced mantle rocks crack the continent, and when the continents crack, those mantle rocks would also go to the continent, but the momentum cannot carry them all the way towards the entire North American continent. So only one fourth, let's say, for example, and the rest were untouched by this displacement of mantle rocks that came up towards the continent. So the original age that during creation week of those rocks remained the same. Okay, they remain the same. That is why we also see them reveal the same isochron age. Understood? Any question? So mantle rocks cover one fourth of North America, for example, as they are being displaced by the pre-flood ocean crust. Okay, here one fourth. Okay, and then the other parts were untouched. What happened to them was they were just dragged down towards, but towards the ocean. They were dragged down. That is why the global flood. That is the main source of the water of the global flood, not rain. Rain did happen, okay, but that was not the primary source, okay. So it is the dragging down, okay. So when the part where the mantle rocks did not hit after it came up from inside the earth and cracked the continents, and then went up to the continents, one fourth of North America. Like I said, I really have to repeat this so that people can understand. Okay, so they covered one fourth, and then since they all are the same age when they were inside the earth, so same isochron dates when they came up. Okay, and then the other side of the ones that were untouched. Okay, they were only dragged down. Okay, the other the one fourth were covered by the mantle rocks. Okay, okay, so the parts that were untouched, okay, we're still um, we're still part of the original rocks that God created. Okay, the rocks before the tapete stands, the Precambrian rocks. Yeah, the Precambrian before the Precambrian rocks. Okay, because we do find rocks. Okay, of course, the Earth is 75% covered by sedimentary rocks, right? So the other 25% are actually, we could infer that they were the original. Some of them, most of them, are the original rocks that God created. Okay, below the Tapete sandstone, below the Precambrian rocks. Okay, so since they were created at the same time, they would also reveal the same age. Okay, so that's the explanation. Any questions? Any questions?
Sorry, brother Jeremy. No, we were. I was on mute. So, in regards to,
I explain how isochron I explain isochron in a different way,
right?
not the standard explanation. This
No,
is a new explanation from CMI. Okay.
I prefer that.
Uh,
I prefer that way, utilizing the flood, utilizing the rocks produced at the flood, utilizing the accelerated nuclear decay. So that means, based on what you're saying, when these geologists, when these uniformitarians utilize the isochron dating, is it not impossible for them to differentiate between those isotopes that are inherited versus those isotopes, daughter isotopes that have originated from the decay process from, say, when that rock was formed? Is there any
this
way
does
for
this does not have to do with the isotopes actually. This is just my explanation because we're talking about how why the isochron. You were previously talking about why the isochron reveal the same age. Okay, I just gave you I just gave the audience a more simpler explanation. Okay, and I hope you heard the explanation, standing for truth. This is the more simpler explanation. Okay, what if you heard it? Romat, did you hear it? Do you have any objections?
No, I think raw mat's away from the computer. No, I'd say there's no objections to be had. I don't see how the uniformitarian or the evolutionist could respond to such a technical, in-depth answer. So
Yeah, this is new evidence actually. This has nothing to do with the the potassium argon, the lead thing, the parent daughter isotopes. I use a simpler explanation of why almost the entire world reveal the same. The rocks all reveal more or less the same isochron age.
which is
Okay,
which is a fuller response because I've oftentimes heard them use that argument an
which one?
objection to that. Why do the isochron methods reveal more or less the same age worldwide? I've heard them
Yeah,
say that.
I already explained it. I just explained it.
Jeremy,
I did not.
Jeremy, calm down. I'm trying to say this is good that you've explained it because I've heard them use that argument before.
Which one?
Jeremy, the argument you just debunked, I've heard them use that argument before. Therefore, I'm saying it's a good thing that you just refuted it because it's an argument that is used. That's what I'm saying. I'm giving you a compliment, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, sorry. I think there is a language barrier here.
That's okay. That's okay. So I think that was an extremely good explanation. So let's move on now to well, you know what? You've briefly touched it on it. I briefly touched on it. So how do we actually speed up the decay rates? Well, for one, based on the catastrophic plate tectonics, we're looking at
Excuse
runaway
me.
subduction. Yeah, go
Uh,
ahead.
ex- Excuse me. Just quick standing for truth. So I explain it one way. Now you're explaining it another way. Okay, that's good. So this will make it harder for atheist evolutionists. So I gave one explanation. You are now giving another. So that's good. Continue.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. So the question is, how do we act? Because if accelerated nuclear decay, if it has occurred, which means that the isochron dates or any dates for the most part are going to date the same age worldwide. Okay, well, how can we speed up the decay method? Well, for example, based on our model, our flood geology model, runaway subduction, and subduction friction. You'll hear a lot about subduction friction. That can actually wreak enough havoc to accelerate nuclear decay in the rocks. Of course, heat and pressure we know today can speed up decay, but not that much. Not as much as would be needed at the flood. But remember, the significant volcanic activity and the runaway subduction, the meters per second catastrophic plate tectonic movement, as you talk about, Jeremy, the heat and pressure during the Genesis flood would be almost an unrepeatable event today in a lab, for example. So all of these factors combined can speed up the decay rate at the time of the flood. Now the question is, when the evolutionist concedes that argument, they'll say, okay, well, the problem is this, creationist, the amount of heat produced from the accelerated nuclear decay would boil the oceans. The radiation put off from the accelerated nuclear decay would kill Noah and his family, and just pretty well destroy the Earth. So that's what they'll say in response. So let's kind of address that. Let's address the heat method. I'll give a few explanations that I believe can explain away the heat problem, can solve the heat problem. Jeremy, I know you're going to want to go into a few examples in the rocks that we can observe that accelerate nuclear decay happen. Now, we know a few that I've touched on that the Rate Project has discovered has to do with helium, fission tracks, and radio halos. This is literally observable evidence in the rocks that nuclear decay has occurred during the flood. So when it comes to the heat problem, though, for one, just more of a basic explanation would be, and this one seems to be pretty obvious, okay? The massive amounts of water that was clearly on the earth at the time of the flood. And Jeremy, you correctly pointed out that the greater bulk of the flood water would have come from the breaking up of the fountains of the Great Deep. But that massive amounts of water would actually protect. It would essentially shield Noah, and not only Noah and his family, but the animals on the ark as well. So you're looking at probably more than a mile worth of water. Okay, even today, and I think I pointed this out to Erica. She didn't have a response in the debate because it makes sense. You know, we literally today we use water in a nuclear reactor to what? To protect and to shield things. So during the Genesis flood, this would not only protect from radiation, it would also take up much of the heat. And that's important to understand here. So also, as Jeremy, you were talking about the breaking up of the fountains of the Great Deep, this would have involved supersonic steam jets that would have taken up most of the heat into space. And space is, Jeremy, we were talking about this pre-stream, that space acts as an infinite heat sink. So it could radiate away. It can cool essentially the excess heat produced from the flood. Even Dr. Russell Humphreys has suggested that there was some stretching out of the heavens at the time of the flood that would remove essentially all of the heat. One other explanation I want to go over too, which I don't know, a lot of people haven't heard before, but it has to do with the fact that the rain that is the torrential rain, essentially, that is being brought down onto the earth for 40 days and 40 nights during the flood, for example, would have brought with it huge quantities of supercooled hail down onto the earth, which would also cool the oceans. But we also, I just want to point out to the audience, we have I think it's almost a 3-hour video where we go over it's Bob Enyart, as well as Brian Nichols is his name. He's either a nuclear engineer, a mechanical engineer, genius on this topic of the flood. And he goes over, I mean, at least 11 or 12 different highly technical mechanisms and ways to solve the heat problem. So anytime the evolutionists will say that, oh, there's no way to resolve the heat problem, oh, you know, the creationists have tapped out, that's just false. I've given these explanations in debates before. I've given just 4 or 5 here again, and you can look to another probably 6 to 10 that can be found on our channel as well. So enough from me on that, Jeremy. I know you got some good things to say there too, so I don't want to take up all the time. What are your thoughts on what I said, Jeremy? And then you can elaborate.
I'll just you mentioned the 4 to 5, right? So I'll just add one more. It's as simple as this. Look at the entire ocean of the world. How many percent are the ocean, and how many percent are the land?
90%.
Okay, and how deep are the oceans? Okay, actually, the oceans are the which trench is it? which because there are mountains beneath the ocean. There are mountains within the ocean that are even higher than the Mount Everest or the Himalayas, which are considered the roof of the world. Okay, so that's how deep the waters are, the oceans are. Okay, today. Okay, and I'm talking about the deepness here. Okay, the deepness. And now, like I said before, to elaborate, I'm gonna. That's one fact. That's one. Okay. Number two, the size of the ocean. Okay, compared to the land masses. Majority of the world are ocean, water. When you look at when you position your globe or the Earth towards Hawaii is in the center is Hawaii and the Midway Islands. Hawaii and the Midway Islands are in the Central Pacific. Okay, they are in the Central Pacific Ocean. You position it at the middle of the this is the Earth, and and they are at the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Then you will not see any landmass at all. You will only see small islands here, some small island there. You cannot see North America, you cannot see South America, you cannot see my country Philippines, you cannot see Japan, you cannot see Australia. Okay, as you can see, an entire side of the world is composed of water. Okay, so I'm trying to explain this. Sorry for my English because it's really hard for me to So here, so my point here is there are the waters of the earth. Wow, just overwhelm the amount of land. Okay, by the deepness of the waters in the entire world. The deepest parts are in the Atlantic. Okay, second deepest parts are in the Pacific. Okay, so one, the deepness, and two, the uh, the ratio between the oceans and the land masses. Okay, so the vast majority of the world are ocean, and that's one, and they are very deep. Okay, now it is also the same case during the flood, during the global flood. Okay, now evolutionists, atheist evolutionists has misrepresented the data of young Earth creationists, YE creationists. Okay, now since like I said, the waters really overwhelm the ratio between the waters, the deepness, and the size. Okay, really overwhelm. Let's say, yeah, the oceans are really the vast majority of the Earth. Okay, to put the vast majority, super vast majority of the Earth,
Right.
its deepness and its yeah. I think the audience get it already. Okay, so
Well, Jeremy,
sorry for
isn't that funny? Isn't that
or
funny how
sorry
the
for repeating.
isn't that funny how the evolution
Yes.
of people oftentimes, and this is kind of just a different, this is just a rabbit trail real quick. Isn't it funny how they'll often say like, well, if there was a genesis, if there was a global flood, where'd all the water go? It's like, as you just pointed out, most of the earth, what is it? More than 90% of the earth is covered in water. And that's just what we see. That's just the tops. Like you said, it's miles and miles deep worth of this water. So I just find that funny that they oftentimes pose that question when in fact just open your
Yes.
eyes. So good point, Jeremy. Very
Yes.
good point.
Yes. You were asking about the heat thing, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
and real
yeah,
quick,
and I'm answering it right now. I'm in the middle of it. So,
yeah, go
what?
ahead, brother.
Anything you wanna add to that? Ah, you
Yeah,
already added it. You just added it, right?
yeah. You know what?
Yeah,
Just so
yeah.
I don't, yeah, just so I don't forget, because as you're talking, I was thinking about the fact that I mentioned the radio halos and the fission tracks, for example.
Yes, yes. I'll explain that later. I'll
I
explain
just
it,
want
or you
I just
explain it.
want to point out to the audience in case they're confused. all that really is these are microscopic areas of damage within the rocks. Okay, so this is observable in the rocks. The rate project has discovered this, for example. So just once again, when your critic such as Gutsy Gibbon says, you know, the rate project was a failure, they admit that they didn't find any evidence. I mean, they're the ones that are publishing this data. So these are microscopic areas of damage within the rocks that result from an accelerated decay process. And I mean, we can even get into like rapid magnetic reversals and decay at the time of the flood, for example, but that's besides the point. So I just wanted to point that out to the audience, that that is essentially what the significance of radio halos and fission tracks are. So I just wanted to get that out before in case I forgot later, Jeremy. So it continue, brother, continue.
Yeah, so evolutionists say that, like you pointed out before, that the entire ocean would have been heated, okay, and it would kill all the fishes. And so why do we still have fishes today? Okay, and I explained the ratio of the oceans today with the continents by the deepness. Okay, it's even deeper than Mount Everest. Okay, all right, the Himalayas, and it's even and I gave the Hawaii as example, that well, an entire part of the globe you cannot see landmass. You can only see islands like Midway Island, Marshall Islands, or Hawaii. Okay, so that's how much water we have today. Now, that's also the same during the flood. Okay, now when catastrophic plate tectonics happened, as you know, magma came out, okay, from the fountains of the Great Deep in the entire world. Okay, so what do you expect below the, let's say, 21,000 feet below the 21,000 feet? What's the English again? Standing for truth. 21,000. Let's say those magma came out of the from the fountains of the Great Deep. Okay. Um, since okay, they would come out, right? So it is like when we boil water. Okay, this magma is the fire that is boiling the water, and the water are the oceans of the world. Okay, and since, like I said, the ocean is really so big, incredibly big compared to the landmass of the Earth. Okay, from its deepness and its size compared to the continents. Okay, when catastrophic plate tectonics happen, those magma would heat up only parts of the oceans, the lower parts of the oceans, maybe at most
Good point.
uh,
Good point.
halfway, let's say about 10,000 up, at most 10,000 feet. So they would at most 10,000 feet. If we are talking about the highest the deepest trenches in the ocean. Okay. Now, uh, what about for the other parts of the oceans that are not as deep as like 21,000 feet? Okay. So let's say I've already said that the deepest parts, 21,000 feet, for example, let's say, I forgot the exact figure. Okay. Only 10,000 feet of it will be heated up by those magma. And the rest of the 10,000 feet, where some of the sea dwelling creatures live, would not be affected. Okay. Because the ocean, like I said, that is why I explained the size of the ocean before. Okay. I'm doing this step by step for the audience to fully understand. Okay. Okay, so 10,000 feet were heated up. and you would die with the heat, with the heat. They're at boiling point, but above that is still 10,000 feet, and that is not at boiling point. They may be a little hotter, but they are not at boiling point. So creatures would survive over there. Land creatures, sea creatures would survive. Okay, so because evolution is saying that sea creatures would die, the entire ocean of the world would be boiled. Okay, so and everything would die. Okay, and let's say all right, 21,000 feet, right? Let's say 5,000 feet. Let's say 10,000 feet. Let's say 10,000 feet. Okay. Okay. When the magma came out from the 10,000 feet, just like in the 21,000 feet, in that 10,000 feet sea level, height of the sea level towards the ocean floor, when the magma came out from the 10,000 feet, okay, more or less, it will only boil 5,000 feet of the of the ocean. Okay, so let's 10,000 feet. So 5,000 feet will experience boiling point. So nothing would survive over there. Okay, and then the upper parts of the ocean. Okay, the upper parts of the ocean, the rest of the 5,000 feet were boiled. Nothing can survive. But the upper, but because it's 10,000 feet, right? So 50% of it is 5,000 feet. So 5,000 feet would not experience this boiling point. Okay, so that's where the fishes can survive, and that's where Noah and his family can survive. Okay, and all the way if the ocean is just let's say 5,000 feet from from the surface to the ocean floor, then 25,000 feet would have been boiled. Okay, and then the other 25,000 feet would not have been boiled. So the animals there would survive. That the fishes there would survive. Okay, but it also depends upon how much magma were released. Okay, how much magma were released. So I'm just giving a more or less sample because we don't really know how much magma were released. Okay, so that is the answer. That is another new answer. I'm giving new evidences here. Okay, I'm not using a standard explanation from answers in Genesis. So I want this video to go to the atheists, and I will debate you on this.
I love it, Jeremy. I love the passion, and I love how uh, detailed you are, and how you utilize the most up to date, advanced lines of evidence and arguments. And yeah, any of our videos, we've put a lot of work into the last few videos on distant starlight, nested hierarchies, the so-called best evidence from biologos, dating methods today, including accelerated decay, heat problem. We challenge any evolutionists out there to respond, um, try and refute what we've said, because I mean, Jeremy, I think I can speak for both of us. We're pretty confident that they're not going to be able to. And this is important too, because you've got your critics, such as Erica Gutsy Gibbon, for example, that constantly says in her debates, like, there's no answers to these. And it's just, that's just false. We've given answers over and over again. Evidence for accelerated nuclear decay, evidence for, I should say, solutions to the so-called heat problem. I love what you brought up there too, Jeremy. It makes such complete sense. So I like the fact that we're being comprehensive. I think that's important. Any thoughts before maybe we move on to another topic? Because I did want
Romat hasn't speak.
Oh, yeah. Raw Matt's just producer tonight. It's just me and you for the most part that are speaking.
So where are we going now, standing for truth, my friend?
Well, I did want to point out the fact that, and if you'd like to, Jeremy, you can kind of be the devil's advocate and give the response that the evolutionists would give, because I
The
find the
debate?
fact that helium was another, like Dr. Russell Humphreys of the Rate Project oftentimes speaks of helium, the fact that zircons contain an abundant amount of helium, which is produced by much radioactive decay, which is kind of the topic we're talking about. But what's funny is those small atoms should have long ago diffused out of the crystals. And so this, as you know, Jeremy, demonstrates that it was produced recently. And more importantly, with what the rate project suggests, from the last time I studied it, produced by a
I can't hear anything. Hello? I can't hear anything. Hello? Hello?
He'll be back, Jeremy. His computer crashed.
Okay. We better tell the audience to hang on. Is the audience hearing us? Well, I'll go to the comfort room for a while we wait for standing for truth. Okay, for the audience that didn't know, standing for truth's computer crashed, so he'll be back for a while, and I'll also be back for a while as I go to the comfort room. Okay, see you later.
Hey, brother Jeremy. My bad. I'm back. I apologize to the audience. Yeah, I had I was sitting on the couch in a comfortable position, and I should have known the computer would die any moment. So, where did I leave off? I think we were talking about the halo. Oh yeah, the helium we were talking about. Oh, it looks like Jeremy. Whenever you get back, I'll just go over the audience because I noticed in the chat. I think it was Jungle Jargon. Hey, brother. He mentioned the fact that the magnetic field of the Earth is decaying, which puts a limit on the age of the Earth. A few other examples too. I like looking to comets, for example, the fact that comets are losing so much of their material from passing the sun that they as well should be non-existent in an old universe. And even in regards to genetic related evidence, the direct way of determining ancestry. Molecular clocks. Isn't that funny how molecular clocks only go back 6,000 years, and the accumulation of slightly deleterious mutations also prove a young genome. So, okay, hey, welcome back, Jeremy. I was just filling in while you were gone, going over a few lines of evidence. Yeah, I was talking about the helium, which is we were talking about it a bit before we went live on how that helium is a very slippery gas. So evolutionists, for the most part, like I know Hugh Ross, that was his argument against Dr. Jason Lisle. He said, you know, this is why we don't use it, because it doesn't work in accord with uniformitarian processes. But the fact that it's so slippery and it escapes quickly, why are these zircons found with such an abundance of helium? Because even if you granted them that explanation and that rescue device, there still shouldn't be that much time. There still shouldn't be any helium, given how you know how slippery of a gas it is. So, what are your thoughts, Jeremy? Go ahead, brother.
What do you want me to do with it? Use evolutionary argument? Because you know my response to that before
Right.
we
Yeah,
made
we
the
were talking
video.
about it earlier.
So what do you want me to do exactly about that? Yes, that is evidence. Yes, that is evidence that the rocks are young. Do you want me to go to the BUT that we talked about before the video? Are you sure?
Yes.
So you want me to present the evolutionary argument?
Yes, just to make it as comprehensive as possible. I think that's a good idea. That's what we like to do on this
Okay,
channel.
sorry, I forgot we were making it. Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. So
Yeah.
before you do that, yeah.
The,
So as I said, just to reiterate, helium exists as a gas, and it is what is it? The second or no? I think it's the second lightest element. Hydrogen, helium, of course. It's relatively small, and it's a slippery. It's a very slippery
yeah,
gas. Therefore, the gas
helium and the
particle,
hydrogen.
right. So that discovery by the RATE project seems to be strong evidence for young Earth and also accelerated nuclear decay. So yeah, how does the evolutionist respond to that, Jeremy? And then
First of all, I'd like to say that the RATE project was done in a world-class laboratory. Okay, so and their results have been peer-reviewed. Okay, and not all evolutionists disagree with it. Okay, remember, it was done in a world-class laboratory, and the numbers are there. Evolutionary proposition and bias uh, led them to invent alternative explanations. Okay, so this is not just an ordinary research. It was done
right.
in a world-class, in a state-of-the-art world-class laboratory. Okay, you can even check it out. It was more than 5 years of research. Okay, now going to the helium. Yeah, like you said, the argument that Dr. Hugh Ross told Jason Lisle, it's very slippery. Okay, okay, that's what the secularists also say. Okay, so but the problem here is that that's one of the only few rock samples that we can give that prove your point, because when it's so slippery, it doesn't follow uniformitarianism standard. Okay, when I let's say walk. Okay, when we walk, that's uniformitarianism. Okay, the speed is more or less the same when we walk, and when we run, the speed is more or less the same depending upon your age. Okay, and how mountains arise. Okay, that's uniformitarianism. The speed of it, the growth, the growth when it rises, so the mountains, some of the mountains are rising, so that's uniformitarianism. Okay, how the speed of how the rivers flow. Okay, uniformitarianism. Okay, basic. Okay, okay. So the helium example that Dr. Jason Nile and I really don't want to go against this data from the rate project. But although this is reliable, this is good evidence. It is overlap. Is overlap the correct English? It is overwhelmed by other evidence from uniformitarianism. Okay, because the other elements, the samples in which are used to date rocks, they follow the uniformitarian standards today. The vast majority, almost all of them. Okay, although we have this evidence, they got more. That's the problem. Okay, theirs follow the conventional uniformitarianism speed of decay, but ours do not. Okay, although although this helium argument is also a good point. Okay, it's also a good point, but it doesn't follow uniformitarianism standards. That is the problem. That is why the conventional scientific community doesn't use helium as the uh, as the method. Okay, so that is good evidence. I will not lie. Okay, but the conventional scientific community follow the uniformitarianism standard. So that is the evidence against this helium uh, argument. Okay,
Well, aren't the
it slips so fast, not
if I
following not following the uniformitarianism standards from the other rocks,
right,
not
and that's a good
following the more.
and that's a good
Okay,
explanation. Now, aren't those crystals, those zircons, for example, don't aren't they dated to billions of years old by modern radioisotope techniques?
yes,
Okay, so the fact that helium is found in pretty decent quantities
sun.
in the zircons really does seem to at least be a challenge to an old Earth, an old universe, deep time, for example. And it seems like the evolutionists, like you can see that in the Hugh Ross, Jason Lyle debate, they're on the defense when it comes to that. Right. Hugh Ross said, well, we don't use that because, it's slippery. And Dr. Lyle pointed out, no, you don't use that because it doesn't conform with your old age doctrine, which I thought was a really good response because it's true, right? They're only going to pick and choose that which conforms to their basic presupposition, their basic assumption, and
A
discard that which
uniformitarianism.
is right.
But
Good point.
we have to. But standing for truth, my friend, we have to be fair. Uniformitarianism standard, which are used against the helium, does also make sense. The helium that we are suggesting also makes sense. But the problem is they got more examples than us. We only got a few examples. They got more, and they follow the
Yeah,
uniformitarianism standards.
yeah.
Okay, I will
Typically,
not
the
lie. All right.
typically the
Yes.
ones that
Sorry.
I'll use. Oh, that's okay. Typically, the ones that I'll use to demonstrate, like directly in the rocks, for example, that accelerated nuclear decay has occurred. Typically will be I'll use fission tracks, which I went over earlier, radio halos, and helium, for example, that's found in the zircon crystals. What lines of evidence would you look to other than those, just to kind of make this argument a little bit more complete and irrefutable, Jeremy?
Carbon.
Good. Are you
Carbon.
talking? Yeah, no, I would
Carbon.
use. Would you use carbon to
Sorry.
demonstrate? Now, would you use carbon, the presence of, say, carbon in coal and diamond, for example? Would you, because we know carbon-14 decays so fast, right? So it should be undetectable in far less than probably about 1,000,000 years, and yet it's found in coal. It's actually found in everything in the geological column. But would you use that to more so prove a young Earth, or to prove accelerated nuclear decay? I think carbon is better used to show that the Earth isn't quite as old as they say it is. But what would you use?
Yes,
Would you use that
carbon
for
as it.
accelerated nuclear decay as well?
I'd use the hardest object that we can find, which is diamond,
Right.
because it is so hard. Yeah, because it is so hard that the radio.
What would?
Yeah, because it's. Yeah. Sorry, what you were saying.
No, go ahead. Did you want to go over the significance of carbon found in diamonds, which, as you said, we know is
The
one
hardest
of
object.
the, if not the most,
Actually, it is the hardest. It is the hardest. It is the hardest object. So and we still see carbon in them. So
Okay, so you're
so
saying if diamonds are the hardest substance on Earth, Jeremy, so you're saying its interior should be extremely resistant to contamination, because we know that they'll often look to contamination to
yes,
explain away why carbon-14 is found in fossils, for example, even in certain strata that the evolutionists date to tens of millions of years old. So they'll say, okay, contamination. Okay, fine. There's their rescue device, and there's arguments to rebut that as well. But so we'll look to, okay, so now
You cannot contaminate diamond.
so
You
now
cannot
we'll look,
contaminate. You cannot contaminate a diamond because it is the hardest object.
right. So okay, so they'll give their rescue devices for fossils and things like that. So now, okay, how do they explain the fact that diamonds being, so we know that diamonds require very high pressure to form. And where's that pressure found, Jeremy?
Underneath the earth.
Right. So deep below the surface of the Earth. I think it was Dr. Baumgartner. We know he's a
Yes.
he's a geophysicist. He
one of the best. Yes.
one of the best. He's responsible for the cold slabs prediction, but he investigated, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, carbon-14 in a variety of samples, and I think it was even in every single case that the carbon-14 levels that were measured literally exceeded the lab's background detection limit. And not only that, correct me if I'm wrong again, but I think Dr. Baumgartner, Jeremy, he even detected significant levels of carbon-14 in coal and
Yes.
even in fossilized wood. And those and those were found in locations that are dated, once again, according to the evolutionists, to tens of millions of years old. So isn't that funny how we can go on and on and on about
Yeah,
lines of
there are a
evidence
lot of.
to suggest a young Earth? But hey, hey, did you want to go into more detail on that one?
Oh, which one?
The diamonds, because you brought the diamonds up.
Yeah, it's as simple as what we explained. It is the hardest object, so you cannot contaminate it. Yet it still has carbon-14 in them. So that's just how we explain it. It's as simple as that.
Now,
Okay,
what if
because evolutionists can use other samples. Okay, where carbon-14 can contaminate. But so we look for the hardest object, which is diamond, and that is one that is irrefutable. Okay, but they've got an alternative explanation, but it is inadequate. So this is where we lead them in the car.
and we were talking about this beforehand, Jeremy. What if they say that the carbon got into the diamond at the time of formation, but because the diamond is the hardest substance on the planet, therefore the interior should be nearly resistant to contamination? What if they just say, okay, yeah, sure, carbon can only last hundreds of thousands to maybe a million years because it decays so fast, but maybe it just stayed in the diamonds because of their hardness. How do we respond to that one?
This is a worldview thing. This is a worldview thing here. Okay,
Okay.
they assume deep time, so they assume that diamonds form millions, billions of years. Okay, so this is a worldview thing. Okay, so they can say that that's why there is carbon-14 in diamonds, because they form billions of years. While it was still forming, then the carbon went in it. Okay, get trapped inside it, something like that. Okay, but us, we do not say that that the planet is billions of years. So that said, these diamonds, okay, cannot they cannot be contaminated. There's not enough
Right.
time, yeah, and there's not enough time for them to form and to be contaminated because of the short time scale in our model. Okay, but their model said there's enough time for them to form and to be contaminated. So this is a worldview thing. That's it.
So what I'm gathering is the fact that if it's a worldview thing, okay. So let's break it down though. So what do we observe? What do we find? Okay, so the presence of carbon-14 in ancient, quote unquote, that's what they say, ancient fossils, rocks, coal, and diamond samples, like you said, diamonds being the hardest substance on Earth, requires high pressure, which is found deep within the Earth, is resistant to contamination. So these examples are clearly problematic for those that believe in deep time. Therefore, these findings put the uniformitarian on the defense. So yeah, like you said, they might have some rescue devices or some explanations, and therefore it comes down to worldview. But what's interesting is we can sit back and we can look at this and we can say, this is some really solid evidence for a young Earth. And like we talked about earlier, the fission tracks, the radio halos, the helium, this is strong evidence that accelerated nuclear decay did occur at some point in the past, which would be the time of the flood, according to our model. And we can sit back and we can kind of relax and say, this is really good support for our model and our position. It's them that are on the defense when it comes to these lines of evidence, I guess is my point. What are your thoughts?
I think the audience don't. I'm not offending anyone, but I don't think most of the people understand what those radio halos are, those nuclear fissions are. So I think we have to give a brief explanation. But before we give this brief explanation, I just want to warn young Earth creationists about 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 this one. Okay, standing for truth, I will be going against Kent Hovind over here, and some of the outdated young Earth creations. Forgive me. Okay, I will
You
be
are
going
forgiven,
against.
brother.
Sorry.
I said you are forgiven, but I can't promise that Hovind will forgive you. I'm just kidding. He'll forgive you. So yeah,
Well,
go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
because Kent Hovind and many young Earth creationists still use the initial conditions of the rock argument. They would say that the initial conditions of the rock when they formed were not known. So they would say that geologists weren't there when the rocks formed, so they don't know. For example, how many atoms of this element, how many atoms of the elements of this type of element is there, and how many, and why are there no elements of this particular element? In short, let's say how many uranium, for example, how do we determine how many uranium atoms and no lead atoms? Okay. Okay. So this argument that the initial conditions arguments can no longer be used. You can use it against dumb evolutionists out there who are outdated, and I think most of them are outdated, especially those atheist evolutionists. Those people from many of those people from non sequitur, those talkative atheists. You could first use this argument. You could first use it. Okay. Now, against those dumb atheist evolutionists. Okay, you will corner them. But to smart against the smarter atheist evolutionists, do not use this because isochron method can overcome this problem. Okay, isochron method, in short, uses several dating methods on one rock and then date this rock. And when they give a more or less the same date, then this rock is the more or less same date that these dating methods reveal. Okay, so um, so we at the same time we would know its initial conditions. Okay. Any questions? Standing for truth. Do you have anything to add there? So we cannot use them.
So are you saying the initial conditions assumption is not a good one to use?
It can be used against typical evolutionists, but not against the best ones.
Well, I mean, kind of
They
like
can
I explained in the beginning and a few times. I mean, the fact of I think the fatal blow to all of the radioisotope dating techniques and methods is the fact that if accelerated nuclear decay did occur, and we know there's plenty of evidence for the fact that it did, accelerated decay would completely invalidate and demolish any one of those dating methods, including isochron dating, because that means those dates, no matter where they are derived on this planet, although they may come back as millions of years, that millions of years is only relative, not absolute, because accelerated nuclear decay happened at the time of the flood. So initial conditions would also apply to. I think that's still a pretty good. I think that's an assumption that is fatal to them as well. The initial assumptions, the constancy of rate, an assumed history, for example, the assumption of a closed system. I would say that those assumptions at the end of the day are unknowable and unprovable, but that's just my opinion.
But Dr. Andrew Snelling did caution young Earth creationists not to use this argument. He did, not only in his book, but in his lectures, because he knows that, and I know that the isochron method can overcome it.
Yeah, but isochron method can't overcome the assumed history and the assumed of the constancy of decay, which we've covered. But that's why oftentimes you know what? No, I do agree with you. Yeah, sorry. You are right. That's why your best evolutionists, and we know that that's only like 0.1% of the evolutionists out there. So, and that's oftentimes the ones we debate. And that's the point. You know, we want to take on their best. We want to take on their best evidence. So you're right. Your best evidence or your best evolutionists, such as conspiracy cats, you know, see, the thing is, conspiracy cats, he's the one, he's known for using the isochron method. So that's kind of why I say him. But yeah, they will admit, okay, these other dating methods, they have critical assumptions that are proven wrong over and over again based on rocks of known age, and they go right to the isochron. So yeah, you're right. So that's why I've said a few times in this debate that it's good for us to also go right for the isochron and destroy their best type of dating method. So I agree with you.
Yes, I would just like to complete the argument. Also, Andrew Snelling did say that when he said to exercise caution using this argument, because he said in some ways we can still use this argument if, okay, since we believe in the global flood, so we can use this initial conditions argument because the entire world was the rocks. I explained a while ago, okay, in great detail why isochrons reveal the same age for most of the rocks. If everybody was listening carefully, I explained it in great detail. Okay, that's new. That's a new evidence you never heard of.
I think
Okay,
also the point, I think the initial condition as well as the assumption of the amount of daughter isotopes present at the start of the cooling, right? Like, they have to assume that the clock has now restarted. So I think even
yes,
with isochron dating, it sounds like isochron dating really is unable to differentiate between, and we talked about this earlier, inherited daughter isotopes, right? For example, daughter isotopes present at the start and isotopes that have decayed from existing parent isotopes, for example, because the initial condition argument would suggest that at the start or at creation, because we talked about this, I think it was in our time dilation video, God, in the creation week, for example, God created things by his word. So let's say, I'll use the same example that I used before. If God supernaturally created trees, and then you and I, Jeremy, came along after that initial moment of creation, and we did analyses on, say, the leaves. Well, we're going to find chlorophyll, as we do find in leaves today. But at the creation event, we might assume that they came from natural processes, but we know that they didn't, because God instantly created the trees. Now, how this pertains to the rocks is that when God made the first rocks, if we assume those rocks had atoms in them, now just like the trees, Jeremy, you and I come along and we start doing radioisotope techniques and methods and analyzing these rocks, for example, we're going to find, let's say we find lead, okay, and we're going to conclude, okay, this lead must have come from the decay of uranium to lead, for example. So we're going to use that to date the rock, and we're going to look at the ratios of parent to daughter, and we're going to conclude millions of years old. But Jeremy, you and I both know, since those rocks were the rocks that were supernaturally created at creation, that result would actually be wrong, because that lead was there to begin with. And why shouldn't they be if God instantly created Adam? He didn't create Adam as a zygote. He instantly created trees. He instantly created rock. So the initial conditions assumption, I think, still applies, because the evolutionists don't assume a supernatural
Global flood
creation.
and the global flood
Does that make sense?
and the global flood. By the way,
Exactly.
just to put your what you said in a nutshell. Can you hear me? Standing for truth.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, yeah. If what I said was a little bit technical, yeah, go ahead. Put it in a nutshell.
Put it in a nutshell, and Dr. Andrew Snelling. What you said, okay. To put it in a nutshell, the initial condition of the rocks, okay, can only be used if we can prove a global flood, and we can. Okay, this is why Dr. Andrew Snelling told young Earth creationists to be cautious in using these initial conditions. Okay, you will have to first prove that there was a global flood in order for you to use this initial conditions argument. Because in a global flood, everything, like Standing for Truth was talking about, the ocean floor was new. So you expect isochron dates within those rocks on the ocean to be the same. Just like the mantle rocks I gave that came up from inside the earth reveal the same age. So the isochron will also reveal the same age, because they went
on top of the continents, and we measure their age, and they reveal the same isochron age. So you need to prove the global flood first and use this initial conditions argument. Okay, that is why Dr. Andrew Snelling told young Earth creationists to exercise caution if you want to use this initial conditions argument. If you cannot prove the global flood, you must not use this argument.
I agree
Okay?
with that. Yeah, that's a good point. I
You
agree with
cannot
that.
use this argument. So the bias of evolutionists is they do not assume a global flood. So that is why they say the isochron disproves the initial conditions of the rock argument. So they are misrepresenting our data here. So
What,
you have to know how to prove the global flood and use this in order for you to use this argument. Okay? Am I clear? I hope
yeah,
everybody gets it.
yeah, I agree with
I hope
that.
everybody gets it. And Mr. Hovind, I hope I'm not trying to be smarter than him, but I do believe he's using I don't want to say it on video, but he is still using this in a wrong. He's using this initial conditions the wrong way. That's what I can tell.
Now, what about this is kind of a
Yeah,
different
that's
this is kind of a different topic, but I'm curious as to your thoughts because we only briefly touched on the magnetic field earlier, but I wanted to like the decay of the magnetic field, which means it was stronger in the past, logically. So my question to you, Jeremy, is in regards to radiocarbon, for example, because if this is true, what the evidence seems to suggest, and we actually did have a stronger magnetic field in the past,
yes.
and we know that the field would have protected from cosmic radiation, right? The pre-flood world, the environment, the stronger magnetic field. I mean, this would have all helped with increased longevity. But the thing is, doesn't that also mean that radiocarbon production would
I'm
have been
sorry.
less in
I'm
the
sorry,
past?
standing for it. I'm sorry, standing for it. You said that the magnetic field helped help help what you call that? Help
So
help what?
what I'm
Help
saying, and this is why
our
it's a
lives?
question. This is a question that I have for you. If we indeed had a stronger magnetic field in the past, which, as we went over earlier, the evidence
Yes.
does seem to suggest, based on the decay of the magnetic field, and the field itself protects from cosmic radiation, doesn't that mean that radiocarbon production would have been less in the past as well?
Yeah.
Because from my understanding, evolutionists assume that it's always been the same radiocarbon influx, and yet the
No.
problem is the carbon 14. Well, you know, Jeremy, it's produced in the atmosphere as a result of cosmic ray bombardment of the atmosphere. So if we had a stronger magnetic field in the past, a lot stronger than the evolutionists would say, especially in a 6,000-year-old Earth, then yeah, logically radiocarbon production would have been less in the past. So that seems to be an assumption, a false assumption on their part as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. By the way, we still have a strong magnetic field.
Weaker
Uh,
though, right?
we still have
Weaker
a
though,
strong magnetic field. It weakened, but it is still strong. Okay, I just want to clarify what you said.
right? Okay, I think this has been pretty extensive. This has been a lot of fun, actually. Since we've been going for over 2 hours, what do you think? Just to kind of bring this all around and sum everything up, Jeremy, did you have
You
some
said
final points, some final thoughts, some final
you
arguments that you wanted to make to oh, you're right. Yeah, you
you
wanted
said
us
you want
to
you
explain
said
the
you want
radio halos and the fission tracks.
yeah you said you want to explain it,
Yeah, you're
or
right. You know what? We should make this as complete as possible. Okay, so that's definitely a technical topic, but let's explain it the best we can in the short time we have. Let me start with, and then you can add to what I say, and you can, if you'd like to, you can explain the
yeah, you can
radio
explain.
halo. So I'll touch on the fission tracks, for example. So fission is it's where the uranium atom splits, okay? And what we get now is a chain reaction that actually produces a nuclear explosion. So two halves of the atom, they fly apart. And because they are so large, what do, Jeremy? They damage the crystal. And so we can see these tracks, or you know what, I should say trails. Okay, we should see these trails where the particles have actually damaged the crystals. Now, each atom that decays, what it does is it leaves one track. So what you do is you count the number of tracks, and if you know, and Dr. Andrew Snelling explains this well, but I'm just explaining it to the best way that I can. If you know how fast it splits apart, then you can calculate how old the rock was back to the time before the track started splitting apart. What would you have to add to that?
It's located at the Moab Limestone in the Grand Canyon.
Right.
Yes. They are also called volcanic ash beds from a volcano that exploded. These and they contain zircons and uranium. Uh, and these uranium atoms are so large that they are unstable and they decay. So, like you said, yes, this results in abundant fission tracks, which means that the atom's nucleus, okay, it splits in half,
Right.
okay, like the atomic bomb drop on Hiroshima.
Yes. Nuclear explosion.
Yeah, it's not a nuclear. It's an atomic explosion. Actually, it is not as because a hydrogen bomb or a nuclear bomb is different from an atomic bomb.
Well, these
Okay.
heavy, so these would be heavy, unstable atoms of uranium, right? And they spontaneously split into what is essentially a rare element. And what's so fascinating about that is a single fragment, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, a single fragment can produce a significant track of damage in the crystal structure. So we're looking at observable evidence in the rocks of damage associated with accelerated nuclear decay.
Yes. Okay. So yes, you are correct, and it forms a visible damage trail of fission tracks. Okay. So, any questions from the audience? Did you see any questions? By the way, the volcano that exploded. Uh, these fission tracks came from a volcano actually, because catastrophic plate tectonics released these magma from inside the earth, and these magma are like because the volcanoes produce magma, right? Or when they came out, when they come out, they become lava. Actually, when they're inside their magma, when they come out, they become lava. Okay, so we're looking at the worldwide volcanic eruption. It's kind of like a worldwide volcanic eruption, and after catastrophic plate tectonics during its final phase, for example, the Pacific Rim. I think you guys heard of the Pacific Rim, or the Pacific the sorry the Pacific Rim. I mean the from New Zealand going to my country Philippines to Japan to Eastern Asia, the rear of Eastern Asia, the volcanic belt, in short, the volcanic belt,
Right.
ring of fire. Ah, yeah, sorry, yeah,
The ring of fire.
ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring of fire. Okay, okay, all right. So that is a direct prediction of the catastrophic plate tectonics model. After those magma came out, and those buckling of those mountains, including these these magma producing lava producing areas below the ocean when they came up. That's why we have volcanoes. Okay, so we have the initial volcano, which started when the fountains of the Great Deep released those lava. Okay, and then we had the volcanoes afterwards. So these volcanic ash beds formed, okay, not when the well, not at the early stages of the flood. They form at the final stages of the flood when volcanoes have been buckled up. Okay, because you cannot form these volcanic ash beds, what you call that again? These fission tracks. Okay, when when you're underwater. Okay, because we can because the continents sank, right? And we found these volcanic ash beds, these fission tracks on the continent. So how do you put these fission tracks when the continents were underground, underwater? So so when the continent came back up, when the continents slowly came back up the surface of the earth after they were dragged down, okay, when they cracked, then the volcanoes, then the collision of plates and so on formed those volcanoes, right? And those volcanoes then formed those fission tracks. So they happened at the last phases of the flood, during the final phase of the flood. So I hope I further elaborate this data. Okay, so what's next standing for truth? Radio halos, or we'll conclude it here? Up to you.
No, that was really that was actually a really good explanation, Jeremy. I love how comprehensive this is. I guess all we can do is dare the evolutionists to try and respond to not only this video but any of the other videos as well. I guess
Okay.
yeah, if you want, I'll briefly go over radio halos, and then you can
Okay. I
you can
think
elaborate.
radio halos will be the last one. And did we cover everything standing for truth?
I think we did. I think we did.
Okay.
If you think
So
of something, if you think of something we didn't,
I don't know. I don't know if we which. Okay, I just like to add one thing. Just a little thing, and then we'll go to radio halos. By the way, to be fair to evolutionists, we do not question the methods of dating rocks and its quality. Okay, here this evolutionists, we do not question how we date rocks, but we question the geologists that take the analysis and interpret the numbers based on assumptions.
right,
Okay,
right.
so and by the way, one more thing, young Earth creationists, do not use the contamination argument also. Do not say that this rock is contaminated. That is why it reveals millions of years. Okay, because this was used before. Okay, because now modern technology is able to detect if a rock is contaminated or not. Okay, so do not use this argument before anymore, unless the evolutionist is super dumb. Okay, and remember about the initial conditions of the rocks I told you about before. Okay, so be careful. Okay, be careful. So standing for truth. Go ahead with the radio halos.
Okay, so I guess radio halos, from my understanding, are rings of color, or well, as the name radio halo suggests, radiation damage. Rings of radiation damaged. They're formed by the decay of radioactive atoms in crystalline granite. Now, here's the thing: it's the rings themselves. They, like, for example, the penetration of the surrounding minerals. The rings, from my understanding, they're found in all directions. That's why it gives that classic look. And once again, just to make it understandable, just like the fission tracks, it is evidence within the rocks of damage. and the damage has to occur suddenly, which is a result of accelerated nuclear decay. And I think if you can touch on this one too, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I think the short-lived polonium halos as well that are
Yes.
found throughout the world also implies accelerated decay. But not only that, it also implies instantaneous creation of these granites. So the existence of these halos, like we're talking about, is evidence the Earth was formed just 6,000 years ago, for example. So that, in combination with the fission tracks, like I said before, is just observable evidence in the rocks that, hey, look, radioactive decay must have occurred at some time in the past. And according to our model, when did it occur? Occurred at the
During
time
the flood.
of the flood. Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy. Whatever you have to add to that one.
Yeah, I have a lot of things to add because you miss a lot of things. No offense, my friend.
So that's okay.
Radio Hellos. All right. What my friend standing for truth here is saying that I think we are familiar with alpha particles, right?
Right.
And we already talked about the uranium atoms to lead atoms. Uranium is the parent, and the lead is the daughter atom. Okay, so the article path alpha particles are removed.
And real quick, just for the audience, we'll just follow along. So what you're saying, yeah. So the uranium, the unstable parent isotope, it decays to lead, but it decays through a series of intermediate steps. By the time it actually reaches the, I believe it's uranium 238 to lead 206. The lead 206 is the daughter isotope. So during, well, from what you're saying, during the decay process, because it's decaying through a series of intermediate steps, but during those intermediate steps, the alpha particles that you're talking about are emitted by a variety of isotopes that actually penetrate. That's what I was talking about earlier, the penetration. They penetrate surrounding minerals in all the directions. And that's where you get that that halo. That's where you get that classic ring of radiation damage.
But yes, correct. But there's another way to explain it. Like I said, the alpha particles are ejected from uranium atom to lead atom.
Yes.
Okay. By the way, I have to really sorry for making it technical. Alpha particles are, by the way, to make it easy to understand. These alpha particles are they are like tiny bullets. Okay, we have bullets, right? Guns, from guns. These alpha particles are like tiny bullets, which shoot zircon crystals. Okay, they shoot zircon crystals, causing the crystals to have this discoloration, if I'm not mistaken, and damages it. So they're like guns. Okay, tiny bullets. These are alpha particles. Okay, where the bullet when the bullet stops shooting, the crystal produces the most damage. Sorry. Yeah, and
That's right.
it
That's right.
yeah, the bullet where the bullet stop shooting the crystals produces the most damage. Produces the most damage, producing a darkened ring. That is the radio halo. Okay, the darkened ring is the when you look at let's Google radio halo, you'll see a darkened ring there. Okay, they are caused by the shooting of the bullets. Okay, standing for truth. You know about this, right? Hello, are you out again? Romat is standing for truth there.
No, I'm here. I'm just on mute, having a bite
Yeah,
to eat
I just
while
want.
you're explaining.
Yeah. Sorry, I just want to make sure that we are in sync here. That we are in sync. Is that the correct English? All right. So, like I said, to continue, it produces a darkened ring. These tiny bullets that shoot these zircon crystals. Okay, it damages it, so it produces a darkened ring. In short, so a fully formed dark radio halo needs about 500 to let's say 100 billion years of alpha particles. Okay, so when you make a calculation, these radio halos, 100 million years worth of accelerated radio decay happened only during the flood, only in let's say 1 year. Okay, radio halos, 100 million years worth of accelerated decay rate, 100 million years. Okay, that is why we see some rocks are dated 100 million years because of these radio halos. Okay, now so with that much decay, like I said, those darkened rings that are being shoot, like that is equals to, like I said, 100 million years of accelerated decay rate as measured by today's rate. Now we are using uniformitarian standards here. So this is hard to refute for evolution. So we are using today's rate. Okay. So how can you refute that, evolutionists? We see these darkened rings. We shoot. We do observe these alpha particles, zircon crystals. We do observe them shooting crystals. Okay, producing damage that produce the yeah, and producing those darkened rings. Okay. Do you have any questions over there? Oh, sorry. I thought there are in the chats. I cannot see the chats actually. So anyway. Actually, one more thing. We are familiar with granites, right? Granites are the most popular, one of the most common rocks in the world. Grammar. Sorry. Granites, uh, all in the world, contain these radio halos. Why? Because the flood was global, right? Those volcanoes, those fountains of the Great Deep were global. That is why these granites are found all over the world. And the best examples are in the Grand Canyon.
Right.
Okay,
You know,
right? So
actually,
yeah, go. What? I
well,
can add more.
well,
Yeah, sorry.
because you mentioned the Grand Canyon, I'm not. Didn't Dr. Steve Austin and others, they tested rocks from the Grand Canyon using multiple different isochron methods, and didn't they get inaccurate results? Or can you elaborate? Finish what you're saying, and then if you know what I'm talking about, if you wanted to elaborate on that.
What do you mean? You want me to go to the Steve Austin thing right now?
Yeah, because it just came to, because I'm not sure if we've discussed so much tonight. You
The radio
mentioned,
halos. I've discussed in the easiest English way I can. I think it's very easy to understand. Is it
oh,
not?
with the radio halos.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah, you explained it perfectly.
yeah,
Yeah, you did good. But I'm just saying
yeah.
because you mentioned the Grand Canyon, it reminded me of something I don't think we touched on. The
Yeah.
fact
We
that
can touch it. Yeah. We can touch it on a little later.
okay,
Let's.
okay, take your time.
Okay. Okay. So I think that's enough for radio halos. I could add more if you want. Standing
No,
for
no,
truth,
no,
or
no. I think that's good. We've explained that well. Um, why don't you get into the Grand Canyon, the rocks that Steve Austin looked at and analyzed?
so. What is your question, my friend?
Well, because we know that this accelerated nuclear decay at the time of the flood would invalidate the absolute ages derived from any of these dating methods. including isochron, because it assumes constancy of rate and has an assumed history. It assumes there was no flood and no accelerated decay. But even in the isochron method, there is a window of error because rocks from the Grand Canyon were tested, rocks of known age, and they came back in error. Isn't that right?
Yes, we can go somewhere else other than the Grand Canyon, but there's no better example than the Grand Canyon. And I can further elaborate the data from Andrew Snelling. Okay, for example, I've given you this data before Standing for Truth. For example, in the Grand Canyon, really, young Earth creationist scientists really love the Grand Canyon because everybody knows the Grand Canyon in the world. It's popular and it's exposed. The rocks are exposed, so it's really great to really investigate the history of the Earth because the rock layers, the 6 mega sequence of rock layers are exposed. Now, for example, in the Grand Canyon, in the Cardenas basalt, okay, actually memorize these. In the Cardenas basalt, using isochron, okay, standing for truth, isochron, they use potassium-argon first. Okay, this is supported by Dr. Derek Ager in his book. Dr. Derek Ager is an evolutionist. Okay, he is an evolutionist who believes 100% that all of these sedimentary rock layers, including the 6 mega sequence of rock layers, all came from water. But he doesn't believe that it came from the global flood. It came from different times in evolutionary history. Okay, that is why evolutionists don't like him. Okay, because he is very close to our data. Okay, now where was I? Okay, potassium argon when they measure in the Cardenas basalt, okay, in the Grand Canyon, potassium argon did reveal somewhere between 500 to 600 million years old. But don't forget, isochron uses several dating methods. Okay. No, sorry. Rubidium strontium is then they use next they use sorry, rubidium strontium. Okay, okay, and the result is 1 billion years. Okay, potassium argon 500 million years, rubidium strontium doubled by 1 billion years. So, like I said before, isochron method should reveal a more or less the same date using different dating methods. But look at this. Potassium argon is 500 million years old. But and rubidium strontium is doubled by 1 billion years old. Well, that is a very huge difference. And they also use samarium neodymium, as I recall, if that's correct. It's samarium neodymium. And they use samarium neodymium, so they use the 3 dating methods. It's again doubled, as it showed 1.5 billion years old. So as you can see, first 500 million years, and then 1 billion years, and then 1.5 billion years. So this is one reason why isochron fails. And don't forget the Cardenas basalt of the Grand Canyon is part of one rock layer, one of the 6 mega sequence of rock layers. And we have not dug all the rock layers in the world. Because we do dig things, right? We do dig things so that we could the foundation of buildings, okay, so that they will be stable when there's earthquake and so on and so forth. So we dig. And this Cardenas basalt in the Grand Canyon is located in one of the 6 mega sequence of rock layers in the world. Okay, so if these numbers here that Dr. Derek Ager agrees, and Dr. Stephen Austin and Young Earth creationists, okay, remember Dr. Derek Ager is an evolutionist. If these ages give really different ages, then this is one reason isochron fails. Okay, now why do these isochron methods fail in the Grand Canyon? Okay, because there was a global flood. Okay, accelerated decay. Remember? So
it fails because of that. There are many more examples, not only in the Grand Canyon, but we use the Grand Canyon because it is the most popular. So since, again, sorry for repeating, since the Cardenas basalt in the Grand Canyon and the other parts of the Grand Canyon that were tested using isochron, uh, excuse me, okay, each of those samples in the Grand Canyon that we tested using isochron all reveal inconsistent dates, which isochron did not predict. It failed. Okay, there are many other samples in the world. Why are there many other samples of isochron that failed in the world? Because this, for example, this Cardenas basalt and other parts of the Grand Canyon, like the Bass Rapids, I forgot what the name is. They are contained within rock layers, right? They are contained within the six mega sequence of rock layers. So if this part of the Grand Canyon has inconsistent isochron dates, and they are part of the six mega sequences of rock layers worldwide, then this is, let's say, the Cardenas basalt rock. Grand Canyon is over here, and they tested it of. If you guys can see my hand, my finger here. Okay, this is the Grand Canyon over here, and this is the rest of the world's. Let's say this is the second or third, fourth, fifth mega sequence of rock layers. If it revealed 500 inconsistent isochron dates, what about the other parts of the entire mega sequence, which contain the Cardenas basalt? What about the rocks over there at the other parts of the world? Okay, because the six mega sequence of rock layers are the 75% sedimentary rocks that I mentioned a while ago before. Okay, so if one rock layer reveal an isochron data that is very inconsistent, which means isochron isn't that reliable as evolutionists claim, then the entire mega sequence, one or two or three of the entire mega sequence also would reveal an inconsistent isochron dates. Okay, am I making sense here? Okay.
And Jeremy,
Yes.
you're making a lot of sense. I wanted to point out that the audience is very impressed with your English and your.
I cannot read the comments actually.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll read them to you. So people are saying you're super smart. Your knowledge is very impressive, and yeah, people, you got some fans, Jeremy. And like I said, Jeremy is one of the smartest young Earth creationists I've known. I mean, we've been. Jeremy was the first one that I got into this over a year ago, battling these evolutionists. So we've been doing this together since the beginning. And Jeremy, you got a vast amount of knowledge at your disposal, brother. So point being, you got some fans out there. They're loving loving your explanations, and they're impressed with your English.
Well, I'd rather not have fans. No offense to the fans. I'd rather not have fans. I'm doing this for service for theism because I don't like atheist evolutionists at all. Especially those from non sequitur and those very talkative atheists. But of course, I don't hate all atheists. I just hate those talkative atheists, especially from non sequitur. So that's one motivation of mine. Of course, I've been studying this creation, evolution, or origins issue for over 17 years. Yes, I studied them, and yeah, studied them, and yeah, fans, thank you, but just I don't know. I don't know what to say really. So just thank you. Just continue to study. Okay, if you have time, study. Okay, and it will it will increase your faith, and I really don't know what to say.
Oh no,
I
that's
mean,
okay, brother. Hey, that's okay.
I,
You're doing a great
more,
job, and I'm sorry that I
thank you.
interrupted you. If you want to continue what you're explaining there, I just wanted to point that out while I had the chance.
But I think I already finished it. So in short,
Um,
if
I
this part of
I did get a
you,
question from the audience for you. Do you want me to read it?
the questions, sure. If there are questions, it's okay. They can ask.
Okay, so this question is from Jamie. He says, "Can Jeremy try and give a quick, overarching opinion on how he thinks the dating method should be doubted?" So I think he's just saying in kind of like in a nutshell, taking all of this, that which is incredibly technical, everything that we've explained over the course of the 3 hours. Can you just give here's a good way to put it. Let's pretend we were debating, fast-paced debate, dialogue, like on modern day debate. Let's say one of the better evolutionists, they came at you and said, "But Jeremy, dating methods, including the isochron method, which doesn't rely on assumptions, it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Earth is millions and billions of years old, not 6,000 years old like your Bible says." How would you respond quickly?
I already responded to that because you assume there's no global flood. It's as easy as that.
Right, and that's what I always like. I like that you said that. That's what I always like to point out as well. You'll see me pointing that out in the debate, because when it's a fast-paced dialogue, when they use that explanation, typically I respond with the fact that these ages derived from these dating methods, including isochron, are relative. They're not absolute. Why? Well, if radioisotope decay was accelerated, and there's a ton of evidence for it in the rocks, for example, radio halos, polonium halos, fission tracks, helium. So if this decay was accelerated during the Genesis flood, then the radioisotope decay clocks, all of these methods, including isochron dating, could never be relied upon, even when they date rocks as millions or even billions of years old, because if radioisotope decay was accelerated because of the flood for the numerous reasons that we discussed, sure, they may come back as millions or billions of years old, when in fact the rocks are only thousands of years old. So Jeremy, it sounds like even for old Earth creationists, atheist evolutionists, theistic evolutionists, it comes down to whether or not you believe the Genesis account of the global flood. Because if you don't believe in a global flood, then you're going to reject all the many lines of evidence for accelerated nuclear decay. But
Global
for
flood
us,
and creation.
so
The
it
creation.
seems like, yeah, so it seems like it comes down to the global flood. You know,
And
that
the
is
creation event and the creation week, global flood and creation week.
good point. Yeah, the creation week and the global flood. So if they reject Genesis as a whole, they reject that creation week where God was supernaturally creating things. I mean, that is an unrepeatable, unobservable event in history, that creation week. And also the Genesis flood, unrepeatable event. So you reject those two things, you're going to have to rely on these dating methods. But what's funny with what you're pointing out, Jeremy, and I find amazing, is even isochron dating has a window for error. Jeremy, what about meteors?
Yes.
Meteorites that they date that seem to come back as millions or billions of years old. What about those? How do we
Gravitational time dilation. Gravitational time dilation. We discussed this.
Now, what about another angle? What if, as we say, because of the fountains of the great deep and the supersonic jets, For one, that would have taken up a lot of the heat into the atmosphere and ultimately into space, where space would have then gotten rid of the heat. Now we know that when those rocks that burst forth from the fountains of the great deep, once they reach escape velocity, they can leave our atmosphere and go into space. So therefore, if a lot of those meteorites originated from Earth at the time of the flood, then can't they also be subject to this accelerated nuclear decay? Or maybe those are rocks that were newly formed at the flood. So it seems like you can also take the flood angle with rocks in space as well.
Yeah, including the moon. Okay, there are many craters in the moon, right? So gravitational time dilation also solves that problem.
But if those craters were formed from rocks that came from the Earth at the time of the flood, then that can be explained from the flood as well, as like the flood model explains.
We can go several angles here. So this is our
Right.
flexibility.
Right. And that's what I want to point out to the audience, is that our model in the flood, our model in genetics, there's so many angles, there's so many predictions, because this comes down to the global flood, Jeremy. Okay? Everything you're saying, everything I'm saying, it correlates perfectly with not only science, but also a literal interpretation of the Bible in Genesis, especially. What if the evolutionist tells you, Jeremy, okay, fine, but invoking the global flood is not science because it doesn't make testable predictions. And we know that the gold standard of science is what? Testable and falsifiable predictions that are also repeatable. How do you respond?
There are more than 30 testable predictions in the catastrophic plate tectonics model, and we have fulfilled about 16 as of now. We have talked about the slabs, which were fulfilled, which were predicted by Dr. John Baumgartner. We've also talked. I've also talked about in a debate before about the crossbeds angle in the Grand Canyon, which show a crossbed angle that matches with underwater sand dunes, because evolutionists say that that particular layer in the Grand Canyon was formed by desert dunes, but the angle of that crossbed doesn't match the angle of a desert dune. It matches with underwater sand dunes. So yeah, that's another confirmed prediction. I can name a lot. And another confirmed prediction is, since we predict that uh, the Grand Canyon, we really love the Grand Canyon, don't we? Okay, because the Grand Canyon can represent the entire Earth. Because the entire Earth has 6 mega sequence of rock layers, and the Grand Canyon exposes those 6 mega sequence of rock layers. Okay, we have the Grand Canyon and the Grand Staircase. Grand Canyon, marine life, mostly. Yes, all marine life. Most there's some amphibians, I think, and there's also the Grand Staircase. Don't forget, it's not only the Grand Canyon. There's also the Grand Staircase. Okay, Grand Canyon mostly are contain the sea creatures, while the Grand Staircase, okay, it's like a stair. Okay, it's like a stair. When I say the Grand Staircase, it's like a stair, and a canyon is a canyon. Okay, so don't be confused by the term. There's also the Grand Staircase. Okay, this Grand Staircase are the land creatures. The dinosaur fossils are there. Okay, Grand Canyon, mostly marine creatures, and the Grand Staircase are a combination of marine creatures and land creatures. Okay, so all right, going back to the prediction, another prediction. I can really name that is the 16 right now, but how long are we now? We're almost 2 hours and 33 minutes. So people have to rest, sleep. But in my country, it's 2:30 p.m. I live in the Philippines, so I'm very much awake here, and I've been drinking a lot of stuff. Now, okay, another prediction. There's just so many. My goodness, another prediction by Doctor. Who was that? Doctor Doing Gish or the one who wrote the Genesis flood. Who was that again? Standing for Truth. Who wrote the Genesis flood?
Henry Morris.
Yeah, Henry Morris. Dr. Henry Morris. Okay, not Dr. Dwayne Gish. Sorry, because two of them are the pioneers of the modern young Earth creationist movement. Okay, Dr. Henry Morris, who wrote the Genesis flood, predicted that since the Grand Canyon was produced by water, okay, we should not find we should find certain ecosystems that have been dragged by the tsunamis that were generated during the global flood. Okay, and yes, we do find those ecosystems that he was talking about. Okay, these ecosystems are consistent with for example, let's say the higher the ecosystem, uh, what do you find in the higher parts of the below sea level, right? And then we go up above sea level and go further up. What are the ones above? The ones above, the ecosystems above. Okay, the ecosystem there and the animals contained there. Okay, are also found at the exact layer at the Grand Canyon. Are you following? You, get it?
I do.
Yeah, and it follows a pattern. Okay, it follows a pattern. But this is a worldview. This is a fulfilled prediction, but it is also a worldview because evolutionists would say, yeah, that's also what we predict. Yeah, because as we know, um, shallow marine creatures were buried first, and then as the flood waters progressed up, as the flood waters increased, okay, it buried different ecosystems, okay, different ecosystems, and deposited them around the world, okay, and there are mechanisms to do that, okay. So at the Grand Canyon, mostly, like I said, marine creatures, right? Because the flood started in the ocean, so they would be buried first. So there's no surprise that there are Grand Canyon marine creatures, mostly marine creatures only, almost devoid of land creatures. Okay, and in the Grand Staircase, as you go further up the ecosystem, as the flood waters go further up, then they bury the land creatures. Okay, the flood started in the ocean, so they bury marine creatures first, and that's what we find in the Grand Canyon. And the Grand Staircase being higher than the Grand Canyon, we see fossils of land creatures, which matches what we predict would be buried, the pattern of burial in the global flood. Okay, I can explain this more in detail next time, maybe. It's already almost 3 hours. People need to rest.
You're right. I think what we'll do is, well, for one, I think it's good that we were as comprehensive as possible, just like we've been in our last few videos in this series tackling their so-called best evidence. I think we haven't confirmed it yet, but Jeremy and I will talk afterwards. I think our next one will be more so on the global flood, just going into the ordering of the fossils, the ordering of the layers, more evidence for the flood. We'll just focus strictly on the flood. But, you know, Jeremy, you and I we'll discuss that afterwards and see because so far we've dealt with distant starlight in this series, nested hierarchies, biologos, which was good because it included chromosome 2 fusion, pseudogenes, genetic similarities between the apes and humans. Today we did dating methods, including isochron. That's one that needs to be dealt with sufficiently, and I think we did tonight, as well as the so-called heat problem that they say is unsolvable. I think we solved it today. So I want to thank the audience for listening and tuning in for the entire nearly 3-hour live stream. So
My friend.
yeah,
Friend.
any last words?
Sorry for interrupting. I'll say my last words after you finish.
No, yeah, you know what my last words were going to be a question to you regarding, did you have any last words to say, brother?
Well, I just want to relate to fellow young Earth creationists out there that what Dr. Russell Humphreys said. He is considered the best young Earth creationist astrophysicist. Okay, he is part of the Rake project. Yeah, okay. I just want to relay his message to all young Earth creationists who have not heard his message, because he did give a message to all young Earth creationists out there, or theists in general, but mostly for young Earth creationists. Okay. He said that don't worry. He said not exact words, but more or less. He said, "Don't worry. No problem cannot be solved." Okay, and he proved that. Okay, two of the best evidence of evolution are nested hierarchy and distant starlight. And standing for truth and I. And is there someone else in the video? I forgot. Standing for Truth and I did discuss comprehensively the solution to distant starlight, which is one of the two best evidence for evolution, cosmic evolution. Okay, nested hierarchy and distant starlight. Distant starlight was solved by distant Humphreys. Chicken. I don't know. Chicken in my country means easy. It also means the literal chicken that we eat. When you say chicken, it's easy. I have no problem at all with distant starlight. Nothing.
Right.
Doesn't scare me.
And I think that
So Dr. Humphrey, yeah.
Oh no,
Yes.
sorry, Jeremy. Go ahead. I thought you were done. Go ahead. My bad.
So Dr. Russell Humphreys said, "Don't be afraid. We can solve everything," and he proved it by solving the distant starlight problem. Okay, which is irrefutable. I wish you saw the video that Standing for Truth and I made a few days ago, and you will see if you study it, it is really irrefutable. Okay, so he said his message to young Earth creationists is, "Don't worry." Not exact words, okay? I forgot the exact words. You can trust the Bible. Don't worry. We can prove everything. And he was able to prove one of the two best evidence of evolution, which is distant starlight. Nested hierarchy, we are still working on it. Okay, and then those are two of the best, and the second and two of the next best evidence for evolution are what we talk about today, dating methods, and the chromosome 2 fusion, which we talked about the other day. Yeah, we address all of them. Standing for Truth, we are done.
Evolution is officially falsified. So hopefully it makes it into the news tomorrow. No, but really, yeah, we've been busy the last the last few days. So anybody who hasn't yet seen the last few videos we've done, please check it out. But it's important to know, yeah, just as Jeremy iterated, I'll reiterate, God's word is always true. There's no problem that can't be solved. And all the scientific data, the observations, they are in accord with God's word. And then that's the most important thing to take from us today.
That's the message of Dr. Russell Humphreys. You can trust the Bible. Don't worry. We can prove everything. And he proved it.
You can be right. You can be confident in your faith. And there's no data point, there's no line of evidence that that we're scared of. So, and that's our goal here is to address what they say is the best. Because and if anyone in the audience, anybody who ever watches this video, if there's something that bothers you, a line of evidence or a data point, let us know, and we will dedicate some time to refute that or address it as best as we can. Because like Jeremy said, we're here to serve the body of Christ. So
we can solve everything, even the origin of oil in the global flood, rather than the evolutions. And we can go over that next time. Origin of jade, for example. You know jade, right? Jade, color green, jade, right? The jade that some people wear. We can the global flood can explain how they form. Most of the elements in the periodic table of elements. I can go one by one.
So I think I think the next one we'll do like the origin of coal, oil, just more global flood related stuff. But afterwards, what I want to do, and we're doing videos as well that people may want us to address and refute. We'll do them line by line. We got a list of a few we still want to do, but a next series we're going to do is since we're refuting evolution's evidence, we want to show some of our best evidence for biblical creation. So, for example, the Tower of Babel and how the genetic structure and the genetics in the world we see today speaks of the Tower of Babel dispersion. In other words, we have traces of Adam, Eve, Noah, and the Tower of Babel in our genetics, and we're going to do another long stream detailing all of that evidence. So yeah, we're gonna call it a night here. We've gone for 3 hours, so I hope everybody had fun. Matt is the producer. If you're there, brother, I think we're gonna call it a night and shut her down.
Something for truth. You said you want to speak to me privately.
Yeah. So once I'm gonna get Matt here, I'm just gonna text him, and
why didn't Matt say anything?
He was just
very good. He's very good at this topic. He's also very smart. Why didn't he say Matt?
Matt's got an IQ of 300. He's one of the smartest guys I know. It is his kid's birthday, so wish his son a happy birthday. He's having a birthday party, so he blessed us with being producer tonight. So he got to kind of sit back, relax, and it was fun. I hope everybody learned something. So Brother Matt, we are ready to close it down for the night. So
goodbye.